Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Investment Hound podcast. Before we get started today, there are three things that I would like to bring to your attention. The first is, if you haven't already gotten yourself a copy of Grandad's new book, Successful Investing: How to Make Money in the Stock Market from Real Life Experience, make sure you go and grab yourself a copy after this podcast. The link to the book can be found down in the description below. Number two, if you aren't doing so already, head over to Instagram and TikTok and follow us on The Investment Hound. That's at The Investment Hound, to keep up to date with everything we're doing so you don't miss out on any announcements. And the last thing, number three, if you have any questions you would like to ask Grandad, or if you have any shares you would like us to discuss on the podcast, shoot us an email on paddy@theinvestmenthound.com. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to put on your imagination cap for a minute. Imagine taking a team from being a strong provincial contender to one of the most formidable forces in European rugby, celebrated for both its success on and off the pitch. Over 2 decades, this club has achieved greatness, winning multiple domestic titles, including 8 league championships and 4 European Champions Cups. Our guest today, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Michael Dawson, the former CEO of Leinster Rugby. Mick's career began in 1972 as a property negotiator, followed by nearly 2 decades as a bond trader in Ireland's leading stockbrokers, Davy Stockbrokers. But it wasn't until 2001, the year that I was born, that Mick took the helm of Leinster Rugby. And over the next 21 years, Mick's leadership played a pivotal role in making Leinster not just a club, but a rugby powerhouse, recognised worldwide for their achievements and sustainable growth. We are unbelievably grateful to have this guest join us today. Mr. Dawson, you're very welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you very much for that very flattering introduction. I'm very well, thank you.
I was up for an hour last night writing that, so.
Oh, you did well.
Thank you very much. How are you keeping?
I'm good. I'm down in Spain, where I think the weather it's worse than it's ever been in Ireland. I've never seen anything like the rain we've experienced here. Yeah. So came down to Spain to play a few holes of golf, and the golf course has been closed the last 2 days. So.
Oh, brilliant! Typical.
Anyway, listen, that's as I say, first world problem.
A first world problem. Yes. Well, currently in Dublin today, it's a lovely, cloudy, windy, somewhat rainy day. So you're not missing out on much here either. Okay. So, Mick, of course, your time at Leinster is very, very interesting to us and the listeners. However, I would also like to discuss about your time as a bond trader in Davy Stockbrokers. So, Mick, you began in Davy Stockbrokers in 1982. So, what was life like for you as a bond trader?
Well, we weren't actually traders. We were actually more salesmen.
Okay.
And, I did 20 years in Davies. I must say it was time well spent. Made lots of great friends. Had great fun. You wouldn't believe the fun we had at the time. And so we were actually salesmen. Really, it was our job. We dealt with institutions like pension funds, banks, insurance companies, anybody who managed money. So we were dealing with professional investors, and it was our job to get them to deal with Davies and to deal as much as possible, basically.
Okay. So you were nearly selling the bond products that Davies had to these professional investors?
Well, no, they were buying and selling Irish government bonds, which at the time were very popular. They had high interest rates, they were government guaranteed. And I say they were all, the fellas we dealt with were all professional investors. So we were backed up by a load of analysts and economists and that sort of thing. And so it was about 5 or 6 stockbrokers in Dublin who were institutional bond traders at the time, or bond dealers, and you were competing with the others for the business that was out there. That's what we did. A lot of entertainment, very old school, by the way. You'll read about it, but a lot of entertainment, a lot of rugby matches, soccer matches, cricket matches, tennis, lunches, pints, and that's what we did. So we wanted to make ourselves accessible. We wanted to make ourselves friendly with the people who were doing the business. That's how we did it.
Okay. So you were on the client-facing side of it. So you were out dealing with the clients, sort of, schmoozing them, I suppose, and going to these matches, playing golf and lunches, etc.
Schmoozing, for want of a better word. I mean, it was there was as I say, Davies had a very serious side as well, with, as I say, serious economists and analysts as well. So, and these clients were being provided with all this information about what they thought the world, where the world was going to go, and it was our business then to get them to deal with Davies.
Okay, interesting. And Mick, that would have been back in a completely different generation, a generation before mine. So how has that role sort of changed today? Is it similar or is it very different? A lot of things would be done online now, and how has it changed?
Yeah, well, I don't. I think the bond desk in Davies is gone now.
Okay.
Bonds were when I was around. They were they were very popular, but they're not. It wouldn't be the flavour of the month now anymore. And as I said, the bond desk is gone. Now, if you buy a fella lunch, he has to go back to the office and say how much he spent on the lunch and pay for it himself. And so it's just a different world completely.
Okay, very interesting. And you said that it was more of a sales position. So, like, I'm studying digital marketing at the minute, right? And sales is a very big aspect of marketing. You're constantly selling yourself and selling your ideas to people internally and externally. So, what do you think were some of the biggest learnings you had as your time as a salesman?
Well, as a salesman, I mean, an awful lot of it has to do with the relationships. So, in other words, getting on with people. I mean, if you're fighting with people, they're not going to deal with you, or if you're not nice to people, or if you're just a grumpy person. So, you have to make an effort to actually. It comes easier to some people than others, but it's just about getting on with people, as I said. And you want, when they want to do a deal, the first person they're thinking of is either Mick Dawson or Davies if they're going to pick up the phone to you, because you've got 4 or 5 competitors out there who are all doing the same thing as well.
Mm, mm. So people tend to buy from who they like.
Yeah, but also it's to do with the quality of the research and the service they're getting, and that sort of thing. So, like, I mean, and Davies were very heavy in that arena, but everybody's doing the same thing. So it was a tough market, but it was good fun. Good fun.
Okay, interesting. Sounds like a completely different world to how I would imagine it goes on today. So like when
Today,
I go
it's
and
what happens today bears no relationship with what went on in the 80s and 90s. No
okay,
relationship at all. And the world has changed, and compliance is a huge word now in everybody's world. I mean, my brother is involved in wealth management, and just your head would be fried with compliance.
yeah,
Whereas in our day, I don't think there was even a HR department in Davies when I started there first. Uh,
wow,
and now there's about 8 or 900 people, so you need a serious HR department to keep an eye on all that.
yeah. So the regulations would have been a lot looser, I would imagine, back then.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I know, and I just completed I started the QFA, which is what you need like now to be able to advise on in finance and stuff like that. And the first module I did was regulations, and in it now they have all these distant marketing regulations that you can do. So like you can't call people outside certain hours, or you have to get like written approval for them if you want to meet up with them and stuff like that. But I imagine there was none of that back then.
Absolutely. No, 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 no regulations at all.
Yeah. Very interesting. So, Mick, how do you think then your time as a bond trader has influenced your approach towards investing today?
Zero, really.
Okay.
I don't do much. I don't do much investing as such. I don't do any research. I don't do any due diligence. As I said, my brother is in wealth management, and I still have colleagues in Davies who I would go back to for advice. So I just take advice from others, and it wasn't something that ever really interested me much, buying and selling shares or anything like that. So I'd only do it on other people's advice, or something you hear in the pub someday. Someone says you should buy a certain share or something like that. But as I say, I don't do much of it, and it wasn't something that ever floated my boat really.
Okay. So you didn't really have an interest in it, is why you didn't invest.
Yeah,
Or you don't
exactly. Yeah,
invest.
you've always got an interest when you hear someone bought a share for £1 and it's now £2. You say, why didn't I do that? But you
Yeah.
have to actually, and there's certain people are very good at researching that, picking out. To be a stock picker, it's like sticking your head in or your needle in a haystack. But I mean, then you go, why not just buy Berkshire Hathaway or something? Let Warren Buffett do all the worrying and thinking for it. He seems to be a lot
Yeah.
better than I'd be anyway. So
Yeah.
I don't have a graph for that for that whole investment world. No.
Interesting. I would imagine a lot of people might be surprised by that at home, considering nearly 2 decades as a bond trader, so that's quite an interesting
Yeah,
approach to investing.
I was much more interested in rugby.
And that leads me on to my next question, Mick. So in 2001, you started as the CEO of Leinster Rugby. So how do you think your experience as a bond trader shaped your approach towards the role as CEO of Leinster Rugby?
Well, really, I think it had very little to do with it because I was always interested in rugby. I'd been involved in, while I was working in Davies, I played rugby and then I kind of coached and then I was an administrator. So I was involved in my local rugby, an amateur. And so, like, it was only when you get into professional rugby world, you realize that this is a 24/7 business and management skills are required because there's an awful lot of people you have to deal with. You're dealing with sponsors, you're dealing with players, you're dealing with coaches, you're dealing with season ticket holders, you're dealing with the IRFU, you're dealing with the ERC. So, and most of all that is about relationships, right? And so but I had no management skills of managing people or anything like that because in the bond world, really, the only person you're kind of worried about is yourself and how much business you can actually get done. So you didn't have to manage other people and that sort of thing. So it was a big step, and took me a good while to actually to kind of get to grips with it all.
Hmm. Was it a very stressful job?
Someday, I think there's no. Like in 20 years, the stress isn't strains because you're trying to make money. The big thing about it is the team that you're kind of CEO of. You've very little control over that because the coaches and the players run that side of the business, and they can determine whether the season is good or bad. Um, so stresses, yeah, early on. I realized we made a mistake in registering of our star player Felipe Contepomi. And one of the stresses about professional sport is that, unlike say stockbroking or accounting or soliciting, is that the media and have a huge interest in what's going on. So if there is particularly bad news, the media want to know about it, all over. So you're under pressure. Your name appears in the paper, which is never great if people are saying things about you. So that's where the strain is. Dealing with the media is always around the place, and that was an expensive lesson at the start.
Okay. So what do you think then, out of the 21 years you served as a CEO, what do you think was the toughest time for you?
I think at the start it was really tough because, again, as I say, I hadn't much management experience. The team were which is what people judge you on. And as I say, that is not, in actual fact, sometimes it's not a fair judgment because there's not a lot you can do about it. But early on, I think just getting to the first couple of years, and then we kind of our systems got better. I think I learned a few lessons early on, particularly surround yourself with good people, right? And delegate well and trust people to do a good job. There's a lot of people better qualified than me who worked with me over the years, but I was the boss. And so I'd say surround yourself with good people is the name of the game.
Okay. Interesting. Because I know you do hear a lot of people say that when you're like, and when I mean hear them, I mean see them on social media, right? But they say that really what you should be doing is, when you're the boss, you should be hiring people who are better better qualified than you are to perform the task that you need done. And
Absolutely.
that's
I think don't be afraid to hire really good people. I think it's a real weakness in a leader if you always hire a whole load of yes people just because they're going to agree with you and do what you tell them to do. You need people that will challenge you, challenge everything. And I would like to think that I was never afraid to hire good people, you know.
mm, mm. So, Mika, as at your time at Leinster, what do you think was the biggest change you made to the club?
I think there was a number of things. I think one of the biggest things was moving to the RDS from Donnybrook. I think that was a game
Okay.
changer. I think then we moved from Donnybrook to Aviva, and only last weekend, Aviva to Croke Park. I think that
Yep.
they have been just game changers, and the supporters have been absolutely fantastic. Just
Mm,
shows you that there is a demand for top class professional sport in the city of Dublin. And
yeah.
so I would say moving to the RDS, which was which was a difficult decision because it wasn't one that everybody was comfortable with because we've been in Donnybrook for so long. Donnybrook was great, but in actual fact, the pitch was crap. The facilities were even crappier. Three-quarters of the people were standing out in the rain. And so we're never going to be able to grow the franchise if we remained in Donnybrook. So going to the RDS was a no-brainer. Then I think other things, moving to UCD, where the team is based now from Riverview, that again was kind of a seminal moment, and we had to raise a lot of money to do that. And I would think that has made a huge difference. And building the stand in Donnybrook and the all-weather pitches. So they're kind of things you look back and say, I made a contribution in that arena. Like, again, you get a lot of reflected glory from team doing well. But at the end of the day, the biggest influence you have really is probably being part of a team that picks the right coaches and that sort of.
Okay. Interesting. And Mick, like, as a CEO, okay, what is your primary focus?
Well, I mean, you're in charge of running the organization, so you have to have a good grasp of every area that's going on, right? Whether it's the finance, commercial, marketing, coaching side, the playing side, a number of people that are going to matches. So and people are relying on your vision as to what you want to do. And I always wanted to grow the brand. So growing the brand meant, moving to bigger stadia, getting more sponsors in, getting more people going to matches. I really, really enjoyed that sort of thing. Now, if you said to me when I joined there in 2001, should I sit down with a master plan and say, this is where we'd like to end up in 2024? And everybody said, geez, you're a genius. The answer is no. It was small steps all the way. We were a different organization, and we just had to take it gradually. But the great thing was I worked with a whole lot of really good people on the volunteer side as well. And everybody was always pulling in the same direction. We very, very no rows at all, which was fantastic. And in a lot of businesses and clubs and that, there could be tensions around the place. I just think in our game we were very, very lucky with the quality of people that we worked with, and as I say, no disputes or rows or anything like that.
Okay, that's very interesting. So you kind of have to have your hands in every aspect of the operation. And also,
yeah, well, I mean, you have to. Yeah, I mean, and again, the relationships. As I said, we worked closely with the IRFU, so you had to get on well. Philip Brown's the CEO there during my time. He was a great guy. Then you had, we had offices in Riverview at one stage. We were down in the RDS, the ERC. The Bank of Ireland with Richie Boucher was a great supporter of ours over the years. Richie's the CEO of the bank, but you had to have a relationship with all those people, and everybody had to feel that they were all pulling in the same direction. And by and large, we were. And we had great support from our sponsors over the years as well.
So really your time as a bond trader, as a salesman there would have really helped you, I would imagine.
Yeah, those skills are there, yeah. And, I enjoy meeting people, and I enjoy people. So if you're enjoying it, it's far easier,
Yeah.
And it's far easier as well if you're meeting good people. You don't have to work as hard.
Yeah. So just as you mentioned there, right, you need to have your hands in everything. So finances would have been a massive part of your job, Mick, right? So in your opinion, what do you think some of the biggest mistakes sports clubs make with their finances is?
Well, every club makes the same mistake. You spend too much money on the players.
Right.
And the supporters, it's a kind of a catch-22. Supporters want to see the best team in the pitch, right? They want to see Leinster have the best players. They want to see them win trophies. And then the honorary treasurer and the CFO is saying, hold on a second now, you have to be careful. So managing the demands of the supporters with the demands of just running the business. And like our business is a non-profit organization. We breaking even is good enough for us, But one of the problems you have, particularly in Irish rugby, and I think rugby in general, is that the money that comes from the centre, the television monies, isn't as big as it should be. And so you're heavily invested and heavily reliant on people through the turnstiles. Now, that's great when you're doing well. But if you're not doing well, the punters don't come through the turnstiles. So you take it, for example, you look at Burnley or Brentford in the Premiership, right? 5% of their revenues comes from people going through the turnstiles.
Okay.
So in other words, if nobody turns up, they're not that, they'll survive, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, and at Manchester United, 17% of their income comes from people going through the turnstiles. So you can see that if things aren't going well, they lose a few percentage points here and there. It's not the end of the world. Whereas in Leinster Rugby, 51% of their income is coming from people going through the turnstiles. And
Right.
that's the same in a lot of rugby clubs, Munster and, Munster, for example, as well, and Ulster and Connacht. So we're heavily reliant on that. And to guarantee people going through the turnstiles, you have to consistently be doing well. And in sport, there's always jeopardy and not everybody does well. So they're the little worries you have day to day.
Yeah.
Now,
One of the
it helps when 82,000 people turn up in the Aviva. Or not the
I
Aviva,
can
Croke
imagine.
Park,
Yeah.
I should say, yeah.
Yeah. I was actually at it there over the weekend myself. I thought it was unbelievable atmosphere.
Yeah, it was great in the first half. The second half drained away a bit because
Yeah.
Leinster weren't scoring tries, so the punters were a bit bored.
Yeah. And Mick, can I ask you a question, right? So what's the maximum capacity of the Aviva? About 55,000, is it?
No, the Aviva is about 50,000, yeah.
About 50,000. And the maximum capacity of Croke Park is 82,000, right?
Correct.
They sold it out. So how come they aren't doing more matches in Croke Park? Like, let's say they do Leinster against Munster once a year in Croke Park. They sell it out. They make it into a big event. They do kind of shows on the pitch before. How come they don't do that?
Well, we've been trying to work that out for years. For example, you say we used to go to the Aviva and we get 49,000 there. And the following week we'd be playing it back at the RDS and there'd be 16,500 after the match, right? And I used to be saying, I'd say to the lads in the office, what are the other 30,000 doing today? Where are they?
Yeah.
So we haven't really worked that out yet. It's the Leinster Munster thing has a dynamic of its own, and it's fantastic rivalry. And Leinster will go down to Thomond Park on Stephen's Day, a complete sellout. And I know that some of the people in Cork are kind of wrapped in a cage and would like to get them to go down to Parky Queeve and have a big sellout. But it is, it's difficult to explain. But if you went to Croke Park to play against the Dragons, 15,000 turned up in Croke Park's not great.
Yeah.
So the answer is I'm not really sure, but also you have to pick your matches where you want to go, and I think Leinster will. They're going to go to the Aviva they're out of the RDS for a while now, and they go to the Aviva for the Claremont match. So it's difficult to work it out, but it seems to be now like there's a novelty value going to Croke Park, and you say supply creates its own demand to a certain extent. I mean, it's just a phenomenal achievement. And last year they sold out the Northampton match in 24 hours in Croke Park.
Yeah. Well, why do you think then, like, let's say the Ireland international team, if they were playing England or they were playing New Zealand or France, surely that would sell out Croke Park? They get 30,000 more tickets in the door.
The IRFU, the Aviva is their home, right? And one of the reasons it's called the Aviva is because they pay a lot of money for that reason, right? And one of the clauses in the contract says you have to play your home internationals in the Aviva Stadium. So Croke Park is not an option for the national team.
Right. Yeah, I suppose that makes sense. And when the sponsors get involved, then I'd say your hands are tied. There's not really much they could do.
You sign up, and the Aviva pay a lot of money to have the naming rights for it. And when the Aviva, in time, if they ever leave it go, you could look at the option of bringing in a naming rights sponsor who might say, listen, you can play one match a year in Croke Park. But I don't know, and we're being presumptuous. But at the moment, the IRFU can't move to Croke Park.
And Mick, just as you were saying there, right, 51% of Leinster's revenue is generated through people coming through the turnstiles, okay? I was looking up there last night. How much are Leinster tickets? What's the average price of them? It's about 20 quid. Am I right in saying that?
And I'd say it's a lot more than that. I mean, they just, again, as I say, I'm out now 18 months, but I don't know what they did in Saturday, but I think they priced it very well on Saturday. So, like, if you want to sit the best seat in the house, you'll pay accordingly. But if you're sitting at the top of the stand, young fellas like yourself, it's 20 quid or something like that. So you're in the game. And so they priced it very well. And obviously, all I heard was good things about it subsequently.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, like, how come there's such a massive jump then between football tickets, let's say, if you want to go over and watch Liverpool or Man United play, in comparison to watching a top tier rugby team?
Well, Well, I think if you go to the RDS, you could be paying 50 or 60 quid a ticket as well, you know?
Okay.
Uh, so there are, and it's just a marketing tool really to let a few, have a certain percentage, 10% of tickets at 20 quid. You'll pay, like, if you go to Rugby International Ireland, New Zealand now, you're paying 125, 130 quid a seat, you know? Uh, so there is, I think the market in Ireland for rugby is, it's right up there with,
Yeah.
Premiership soccer tickets as well, even though and they play a lot more matches than we do.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, that's very true. Yeah. And Mick, then what do you think the biggest? Because I'm thinking now of the Ireland international football team. Okay, the Ireland international rugby team has produced some of the best rugby players ever known on the face of this planet. Why can't we produce the same level? What's the difference in the Irish rugby and the Irish football that we can't produce the same level of top quality footballers?
Well, I think that you have to say there's a lot less rugby players in the world than there is soccer players. Number one, right? So everybody plays soccer. So it's very, very difficult to make it to the top level. Also, since Brexit, the young kids in Ireland can only go over to England at 18, whereas they used to go over 14 and 15 years of age. And it's also, since the Premiership has become a kind of a juggernaut, they're recruiting worldwide. Whereas in the old days, they tended to recruit just Irish kids, English kids, Welsh kids, and they all got to play at the top level. It's just more difficult and there's more around. It's just a question of supply
Okay.
and demand. So, like in rugby, there's a lot. Like Ireland is one of the premier rugby playing nations in the world, right?
Yeah.
And there's only, you go to a World Cup, only about 20 teams play, whereas it could, like entering a soccer World Cup, it could be 150 nations starting out. So it's competition. And the competition, I would say that there's a lot of very, very talented kids in Ireland, but you're competing against the whole of Africa, the whole of Asia, the whole of Europe. Whereas in rugby terms, we've managed the professional game has really suited Ireland and our recruitment, our academy system, the secondary school system we have has just been top quality. And it's been over the last 20 years, it's been nursed along to produce world class players.
Yeah. It seems nearly like the infrastructure is better set up here for rugby than it is for football.
Yeah, well, there's an awful lot of kids play soccer. I just think it's so difficult to get into that top level of the Premiership teams because of as I say,
Mm.
because of the competition. If you look at the Arsenal team, Manchester City team, right? Look at Manchester United, look at Tottenham, but all those big teams. How many qualified players are actually playing on their first teams? I mean, I think
Yeah.
Arsenal have produced a team where there's no English fellas have been on it. So like
Yeah.
even so, you're saying Ireland are struggling. Well, I mean, if the English can't make it in the top divisions, what chance have we got?
Yeah. That's very true.
Now, I'm not an
Right.
expert on
Right.
soccer. I'm not an expert in
Yeah.
soccer, so that's only a personal opinion.
I'd say we'll probably be down in the dumps in football wise for another few years. So
Well, it looks as if we're struggling a bit, all right, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So Mick, I understand that CVC Capital, who are a private equity fund, right, have invested significant amounts of money in rugby. How do you think their investment will change the game going forward?
Well, I'm only looking at it for in hindsight, right? And they invested money in the Premier Rugby, they invested in the URC and the Six Nations. And I have seen nothing, as in zero, apart from they've given the money, uh, the capital sum. I haven't seen them significantly do anything. Now, maybe I'm not doing them justice because they came in during COVID when it was tricky to influence the thing. But I've yet to see them influence the game. I don't know what they've done. The answer. I
What do
can't
you think?
see it. I can't see anything significant in what they're doing. They paid a lot of money, and I was always asking, what's the trick here? What are we all missing? These fellas
Mm,
have, and I've yet to see it. So I don't know what they're doing.
okay. And what do you think their motive is? What do you think? What do you think they're looking for? Do you think they're just looking for a return, or do you think that they're gonna?
Well, they're private equity, so that's what they do. They look for a return, and they had great success in Formula One. Now, obviously, I would say this went through a lot more uh, serious investment committees than have given it thought about. But they invest the money. I'm not sure what they thought they were going to do with rugby, but as I say, I can't see one significant thing that you could say that's what private equity has done. It's really good, uh, and they certainly haven't. to the best of my knowledge, as I say, I'm out of this about 20 months. They certainly haven't increased the revenues for the clubs yet, which is what
Okay.
you really expect them to do. I mean, they need to increase it because if they want to get out in 5 or 6 years' time, they have to have lifted the value of everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think there's a possibility of the URC merging with the Rugby Premiership?
I don't know is the answer, but I'd be surprised. I think I'd be surprised given that they've made they make such good strides with South Africa. Italy have improved now, and I think that the contracts are signed for a bit of a future. So I'd be surprised if they team up with the Premiership. It's
Is
been
that
on the,
something you would
it's
like to
been
see?
talked it's been talked about for a long, long time, and it's something certainly in back in the early days. The Welsh were very keen on because they had great relationships in the old days with a lot of the big English clubs. But I think it's gone. I think the Premiership in the early days certainly had absolutely no interest in playing against any of us. Now things have changed, given that their finances don't seem to be in good health. So I'm not sure. I'm not on top of it. I don't know is the answer.
Would you like to see it happen?
Uh, no, I think the URC is in a reasonably good space now. South Africans have brought a lot to it. Like it's always playing against English clubs. It's always interesting and that sort of thing. And I've enjoyed competition with them over the years, particularly through the European Cups. But no, I think the URC is in a good space and should stay the way it is.
Okay. Lovely stuff. Well, Mick, I think we'll wrap it up there, right? That was a very informative and very interesting episode of the podcast. Thank you very much for coming on and agreeing to do this. We really, really appreciate your time. So, ladies and gentlemen, if I just want to shout out Grandad's book again real quick, Mick, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already gotten yourself a copy of Grandad's new book, Successful Investing, How to Make Money in the Stock Market from Real Life Experience, go and get yourself a copy today. You can find the link down in the description below. And we will see you again next week.